Dear Miss Ring, below are my responses to your questionnaire. 1. I would support and co-sponsor a state civil rights bill for gays and lesbians. 2. I do not favor a statewide registry of names of people who test positive for HIV. 3. I favor an increase in funding for state AIDS services. 4. I favor more aggressive and better funded prevention programs particularly targeted at young people and minority communities where infection rates continue to increase. 5. I favor mandatory Medicaid coverage for persons with HIV/AIDS. 6. I favor legalizing same-sex marriages and would fight efforts to prohibit such marriages. 7. I believe in the rights of gays and lesbians to become foster parents, adopt children, and have the right to custody of their own children on the same basis as heterosexuals. 8. I support a woman's right to choose an abortion, favor Medicaid funding of abortions for poor women, and oppose parental notification laws. 9. I vigorously support existing affirmative action programs. Please call me at the number listed above if you have any further questions. Sincerely, Barack Obama, candidate for State Senate, 13th District. This was sent on February 15th, 1996. In 2004, the then candidate Barack Obama was running, and he said he supported civil unions and saying they would have the same stance as marriage, but that it wouldn't have the religious connotation, and oppose same-sex marriage because of religious connotation, which is a bizarre argument. So in 1996, that letter was written by then Senator Obama. And then in 2004, he didn't say he supported same-sex marriage, but instead civil unions to remove the religious connotation. Between 1996 and 2004, one thing changed. Because in November of 2000, Vice President Al Gore won. Let me get you the exact numbers here. Coming in first place, Al Gore received 50,999,897 votes to George W. Bush's 50,456,002 votes. George W. Bush won 271 Electoral College votes versus Al Gore's 266 votes. One of the most famous presidential elections in American history, the third time in American history where the choice of the American people has not gone on to the White House. The first one was with Andrew Jackson, the second one was with Benjamin Harrison, the third was, actually no, I think there was also 1876. If I remember right. 1876 when Samuel J. Tilden. So you got 1876. And then I think you have, Point being, that what happened there, George W. Bush received the presidency despite winning fewer votes than Al Gore. George Bush was propelled into the presidency by the religious right wing, evangelical Christians and Mormons who supported his anti-gay, anti-abortion, anti-stem cell research views. And this is where the video is really supposed to be about. Everyone is talking about how Donald Trump is the worst president in American history, and I've been thinking this for a while, but as I was thinking earlier today, and if you look at opinion polls, U.S. President, hold on, let me, I had the article up, it was, Oh yeah, here we go. Another window. Donald Trump comes in as in the latest opinion survey that is on Wikipedia. Donald Trump is ranked number 44. George W. Bush is ranked as 33. And that puts Donald Trump as the worst president in American history, according to the latest opinion poll. He did worse than Andrew Jackson and Andrew Johnson. That takes some doing. But we need to remember, why is George W. Bush ranked higher than Benjamin Harrison? Benjamin Harrison actually signed civil rights legislation when he was president, and is one of the most underrated presidents in American history. George W. Bush, on the other hand, let's see what he did. In his first year of office with the Democratic Senate, he was able to sign the Patriot Act, which essentially nullified entire amendments to our Constitution, and this had a lot to do with NSA surveillance and many other actions which I still believe are illegal. The Patriot Act is still unconstitutional, and it still needs to be repealed as soon as can be. Donald Trump has done nothing of the sort. George W. Bush has had increasing power of the religious right. I believe this is the main reason why Obama went from being just in favor of gay marriage flat out during Clinton's administration, and instead in 2004 said, well, civil unions because marriage, religion, which is a very weak argument in my opinion, is because in that era, now it's really easy to forget with all of the media hysteria of nowadays, George W. Bush really pushed the religious rights agenda to discriminate against LGBT people and against women, and just generally being a terrible person. This is almost conspiracy level theory, but I do know that he was an oil man, and I have suspicions that there are connections between the Bush family and Saudi Arabia that go way back. The Bush family, including his father, have opposed Iran mainly because it doesn't benefit his Saudi friends because of the religious war that goes on between Iran and Saudi Arabia, including this and of course the Mujahideen, which were started from Saudi Arabia, we supported in the 80s when his father was vice president, and the Mujahideen then took over Afghanistan and then became known as the Taliban. Need I go into details? So I think it's not a stretch to believe that there's more going on there than is in the public narrative. Our economy, his management of our economy led to the 2008 recession. There were warning signs, and his administration did nothing. He opposed environmental laws. He removed us from the Kyoto Protocol. He did everything he could to increase his personal revenues from his oil businesses. Sound familiar? He broke our immigration laws. We used to have work visas for people from Mexico to come up to the United States and work on our farms, and then they go back to Mexico and they take money back home, and that's one of the easiest ways to do foreign direct investment, is by having people from other countries not as well off as yours coming into your country. It's a very effective form of FDI that makes sure the money goes right to the people who need it. George Bush significantly changed our immigration laws, and that's when illegal immigration became a problem. His mishandling of Katrina by his administration was absolutely abysmal. Very similar to the handling of Puerto Rico after they had a hurricane by Donald Trump. And then, of course, the Iraq War, which opened up one of the second largest Shiite-run state in the world to being invaded by ISIS, which I know was funded by Qatar, and I am pretty damn certain what has connections to Saudi Arabia. All of that because of George Bush's administration. As soon as the Republican Party got a trifecta, we went to war. And we went to war to take out the second most powerful Shiite state in the world, to support our Saudi allies who just 2 years before, citizens of Saudi Arabia bombed the Pentagon. This is messed up. This is what George Bush did. And then, of course, the final 11th point I have on George Bush is that with his tearing up of the Bill of Rights and his saying that, well, if they're not citizens and they're not in American territory, does the Constitution still apply? Well, apparently American law still applies, and last I checked, the Bill of Rights is the law of the land. And George Bush's cherry-picking of which laws should and should not be followed if you are a citizen or not, if you're on American soil or not, has led us now to the immigration prison crisis that is ongoing with the current administration. Donald Trump is a terrible person, but he has not passed legislation himself that has basically nullified entire amendments of our Constitution if you're not a citizen. He has not significantly increased surveillance. Frankly, it would be really hard to do that after George Bush. He's been unable to repeal gay marriage. He's been unable to do all of these things. And yes, he's an offensive bag, and I don't like him. But we need to not give Bush a free pass. He was really, really bad for my country. And we really need to remember what he did. What else should I mention about this? This is why I think George Bush is actually worse than Donald Trump. When I was thinking about it earlier today, if you look at all the legislation passed under Donald Trump, there's only been one big piece of legislation, and that is the tax reform of last year. He couldn't even pass a major healthcare repeal of Obamacare last year with a trifecta. He's a completely incompetent president. George Bush, on the other hand, was able to pass the Patriot Act and convince almost every senator, with the exception of Russ Feingold, to vote for it. That included my own Senator Patty Murray, who is definitely one of the more left-wing members of Congress, voted for the Patriot Act. George Bush's administration, and there was a highly effective at eroding our rights, at eroding the Constitution. I remember I could once go to Canada with a driver's license and my birth certificate. You can't do that nowadays. You cannot go to Canada without a passport or a nexus. That's the only way, and that's thanks to George Bush. He tightened our border security with Canada, because, they're invading us with tasty maple syrup that we buy and give them money for, but Canadians are not attacking our shores. They're not blowing up churches. They are not... Oh, wait, I'm describing the Ku Klux Klan, aren't I? Who come mostly from the South. And that's what he did. He made it so we have the ESTA. So, used to be Europeans could come to the United States, show up with their passport, and get a stamp, and welcome to the United States. Have a good visit. That's not true anymore. You have to spend $20 to $40. I think it's $20 or maybe it's $40 on this special visa, because by definition I see a visa as I must pre-register and pay a fine to visit your country. If I have to do that, it's a visa. That's what ESTA is. It's just not as expensive and doesn't last, not as expensive as our actual U.S. visa, what we label as that. And George Bush alienated us from our allies. He also shredded the Constitution. Mass surveillance. He was our worst president. He was more effective than Donald Trump at getting this done. And, I know you can't necessarily judge someone just because of who they're related to, but look at his grandfather. Prescott Sheldon Bush was a really, really bad man. Prescott Bush, and his bank was expected of holding gold of Nazi leaders, and he was a director of that. And they're like, it's on whether he was aware of it, but and some people say he's not a Nazi sympathizer, but ultimately, if you're on the board of a company, you're responsible for what happens at your company. And if you look at his wow. But then his political life was really different as well. And he was pro-Planned Parenthood and Negro College Fund. You can't judge someone by their grandfather. So with that, I doubt he was actually a Nazi. I doubt that. But it doesn't matter who Bush is related to. Due to all of those things, I believe George Bush was probably the worst president in American history, and we need to remember that. And we need to remember just how far we came under the 8 years of President Obama. And one way I'm putting it myself is, imagine if, what would it look like? Thoughts I'm going to leave you with today. Imagine what it would look like if we had a president who wanted universal health care for all Americans and would do everything he could to get as close as we can to that goal. Imagine if we had a president who wanted to have high-speed rail across the United States. Imagine if we had a president who supported free community college. Imagine if we had a president who supported gay marriage for at least 20 years. And imagine if we had a president who, that was Obama's platform. People say, oh, what would happen if Bernie Sanders won? Well, we basically, I think a big reason Sanders didn't run in 2008 was we had Obama. And Obama was able to run, and he was able to win. And he was unfortunately not able to get everything done, but most of Obamacare came through. Millions of Americans have health care who wouldn't have it otherwise because of him. We have gay marriage nationwide. We have anti-gay discrimination. He did the Matthew Shepard Act in his first year of office. And that is what a pro-queer candidate who supports universal health care and universal education and high-speed rail looks like. And that was the policies of President Barack Obama. And it's really easy to forget how much progress he gave us and how we need to be more thankful, because he really helped our country. And he couldn't solve everything. The Democratic Congress didn't sign his closure of the Guantanamo Bay prison, and the high-speed rail bill was also died under Pelosi's leadership. And I hope that no candidate in the next year is going to be perfect, but whoever it is probably going to look, if we get the best candidate we can get. And right now, I like both Harris and Warren. I think they are both very good people with very good policies. They would do equally well. They're fantastic politicians. And they both remind me of Obama when I was in high school and watching him run for office. And they're not going to get their entire platform done, but they are going to do the best they can. And their platform is very similar to what Obama had in 2008. Most of their platform is not going to be implemented because Congress is going to oppose it, even though the majority of Americans agree with everything they're saying. But and that is why we need to get good state legislators, and we need to get good members of Congress. Now, how are we going to get a president like Obama again? Well, first thing first, go get active in your local county level Democratic Party. Go check out what they're doing. Go check out their policies. If you can push your Democratic Party more towards what the majority of Americans want, so you get candidates who represent what Americans want, and I've written things on my blog about this multiple times. I do it every year or two. And then you can get really good, solid candidates running at your local legislative level. That comes first. President Obama, who did all of the things I just said, started as a state senator from the south side of Chicago. That is where presidents begin, not just him. So get involved in your local party, local Democratic Party, at your in your county, wherever in the United States you live, and get good people running for office. Maybe you want to run yourself. And then with a solid state legislature, leaders will emerge who are making a difference, who are able to get policies done. You will get great governors, and you will get, my governor, Jay Inslee, his human rights record for gay marriage and death penalty and all of that is, second to none. His social right justice record is pretty darn stellar. It always has been. But, where he started, state legislature. He started in the legislature, as does everybody, pretty much. My member of Congress, Rick Larson, actually is, he started as a Snohomish County level, a little south where I live. But, point being, local politics is where it all begins. And then, when you get a great senator, and you get a great governor, somebody who really speaks the truth and does what's right, you get somebody like Obama, that person will go from being a relative nobody to being a major presidential candidate. As Michelle Obama wrote in her book Becoming, which I've read a little bit of, pretty much in 2005, 2006, Barack started telling Michelle how he wanted to run for president, and seemed like a long shot. A freshman senator in his mid-40s. Well, he won, and that is pretty fantastic. He's one of the youngest presidents we're ever going to have. But the only reason we were able to get that is because people on the south side of Chicago got involved in his campaign to be a state senator back in 1994. And they got him elected because he has really good values, really in line with the majority of Americans. Got him into the state Senate. He became a leader in the Senate very quickly, in terms of not like having a position, but just pushing for really good bills from the get-go. And then he ran for the U.S. Senate and won. And 4 years later, he became the President of the United States. And ultimately, that happened because of local activists in Cook County. You have the power to do that yourself. Go get involved, back good candidates, do good work, and make the world a better place. And who knows? Maybe that young African American who is recently married and going to have kids soon, running in your local county, will be president someday. It will only happen if you go support them today, so get involved. Go fight, win. Make America better. Make the world a better place.